Hello, my name is Tucker Johnson, and this is NIMSY Live. On February 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a special military operation to be carried out in eastern Ukraine. Moments later, Ukrainians awoke to a full-scale attack against multiple targets, including the capital of Kiev. As of this morning, talks are going on, last time I checked, but the news is still unfolding. The language services industry is about fostering communication and understanding across borders, across culture, across language. We are an industry that is literally made up of people from every country, representing every language and every culture. Yet despite our differences, we are united in the common goal of fostering understanding through translation, localization, and culturalization the world over. At NIMSY, we hire the best people, which means we have a very diverse team. I am an American, my partner, Brazilian, our CEO, Czech, VP of Sales, Belgian, COO, Slovak, CMO, Azerbaijani American, our VP of Research, Deutscherin, our principal technology researcher, who lives outside of Moscow, is Russian, and our CIO is from Ukraine. If you are lucky, then your companies are just as diverse. That is the beauty of our industry. And today, we're going to talk about the role that we play in the language services industry in times of global conflict. Because for us in localization, every foreign war between nations has the potential to become a civil war between colleagues and peers. So please note, as we go through this today, disrespect for any of our colleagues that is based on their country of origin, whatever that may be, or the language they grew up speaking, is disrespect for the entire industry and what we stand for. So please keep that in mind as we continue this conversation. The attack on Ukraine was carried out by land, air, and sea and continues to be accompanied by ongoing cyber attacks and propaganda campaigns. In return, other governments, including that of Ukraine and the United States, have launched their own forms of propaganda campaigns as well. This makes it very difficult for the average world citizen to understand what is happening. We are in the fog of war. Lies and propaganda, though, must be translated to spread. As linguists and language professionals, we are in a unique position to identify and report faulty information and misleading language. And that is what we are going to talk about today. This is not only a conversation happening on this is not the only conversation, I should say, happening on the subject, though. So please, if any of you have come across resources that should be shared with other language services professionals, please link to them in the comments. We will be sharing some resources as well, but surely we have missed a few. I am joined today by international translator and journalist Óscar Curros, who, like many of you, has been actively fighting these threats long before the sirens sounded in Kiev last week, or as my people here in America call it, Kiev. It is him that you have to thank for this episode, as he reached out to me last week. I was on vacation last week, and he reached out to me. I'm very passionate about what we're doing here and wanted to understand how we can help start a conversation here. So I'm going to turn it over to Óscar. Óscar, welcome to the show. Thank you, sir, for taking the initiative. This definitely wouldn't have happened without you.
Thank you, Tucker. This kind of crisis requires a fast response from many of us. So it's the philosophy of be present, be here and now. And what I'm bringing you, what I'm wearing, is a t-shirt that doesn't intend to be disrespectful with anyone's beliefs in God. And it's an initiative, a previous fundraising initiative by Maria Pia Montoro in a European context, during a European Congress. And one of the speakers asked these linguists why they were translators. And Maria Googled, I'm a translator because, and let Google fill it. And the response was, I'm a translator because God is busy. So this is a piece of advice about how we should be careful about communication in artificial intelligence and where it might lead us. And it's also an easy way of starting a fundraising campaign. And many of our peer translators and companies have started their own initiatives. So the only thing I've been doing in recent days, was just compiling information and posting, but other people have taken different actions. Half of my network has they said in a previous question that I asked them, have donated more money, and almost the other half have offered pro bono services, or maybe they have signed petitions and did other things. So people are moving, people are trying to help the people of Ukraine, the refugees, and anyone who's suffering from this crisis. And that's what matters. And I've joined all that information, I've put all that information together in an article called How Translators Can Help the People of Ukraine, that is linked in the event. And you can access it, and that's a compilation of actionable ways of helping.
And this article is available. It's a LinkedIn article, just to be clear. So it's available for anybody. It's in the comments down there. Thank you very much, Oscar. We also have a guest, a surprise guest, who wasn't announced or anything, that's here today. Would you care to introduce our friend and colleague here, Oscar?
Yeah, of course. Barry Slaughter Olsen is a very well-known interpreter and professor of interpreting at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And I asked him to join as the VP of Customer Success at Kudo, because Kudo is a company that enables intercultural and international dialogue. And they've been working on high-tier events around the world with world leaders. And they have also sponsored something that was called the Language of Peace by the CEO Fadat Sabetian, who is himself a child of war. He stayed several years under the pressure of war in the Iran-Iraq war. So please, Barry, can you tell us what's the Language of Peace and what other initiatives are you supporting to promote the wellness of the people affected by this war?
Oh, Barry, I think you're on mute.
Indeed, I am. Like a good interpreter, I had muted my microphone and then I had covered it up.
Old habits,
with another window. So yeah, those old habits die hard. But at any rate, let me just again say, Oscar, thank you so much for the last minute invitation. And Tucker, it is always good to be with you. You know, as you had mentioned, Oscar, our founder and CEO at Kudo, Fardad Zabadian, is actually someone who was a child of war. He went through his first 8 years having to live through war in Iran when the Iran-Iraq war was underway. So he has a very special concern for those who suffer because of armed conflict. And we have always been associated with peace. At Kudo, we know how important dialogue is, how important it is for people to come together and express concerns and find solutions by dialogue and by discussion. We also feel that actions speak as well. And so we have been seeking ways to support peace, to support efforts for peace, long before the conflict began last week in Ukraine. You had mentioned the support that we gave for the International Peace Honor Ceremony that actually ran last night on YouTube, making it possible for that to be available in multiple languages so that people around the world were able to follow the different awards that were given out by Peace Tech Labs. So that's one example of some of the things that we do. I wanted to come on for just a few minutes before you guys get into the heat of the discussion that you're going to have, to mention something else that we are launching today. And we're doing this because of a great desire to help and to alleviate the suffering that we are all seeing. Interpreters the world over, translators, everybody working in the language space, we want to be able to use language to help people understand one another. And I have seen over many years that translators and interpreters often get into these professions because of a deep sense of justice and wanting to make sure that things are fair and access to information is fair. And so many of us have asked, what can we do? How can we raise our voices? How can we make a difference? And as we've thought about it, we tried to just become very practical. And we know that as hundreds of thousands of refugees stream out of Ukraine into other European countries, that language is a barrier, and that there are so many people, so many organizations that are seeking to assist. And so we thought, well, what we can do is offer up what we do, our platform, free of charge to non-governmental organizations and volunteer interpreters who are aiding in these relief efforts, to be able to facilitate communication, preparations, organization, to make sure that people can get the assistance and the aid that they need in a time of stress and suffering. And so, that is what we are going to be doing. We are launching a campaign today. There'll be more about it in a press release and blogs. There's a landing page, and Tucker, if it's okay, I can drop the link to that landing page into the chat.
Please do.
And allow people to just go there. And if they have a need, they need to meet virtually and they need interpretation, we can help facilitate that at no charge whatsoever, again, for NGOs and for volunteer interpreters. That's what we are seeking to do as this tragedy continues to unfold. And we will continue to support our effort to support the language of peace and efforts to achieve peace and to alleviate suffering wherever we can, based on what we do as a company. So that's what I wanted to share. Turn it back over to you, Oscar. Tucker, I don't know if you've got any questions, but thanks for just letting me speak for a few minutes.
No, thank you. And I know you're a busy man, so you got to get back out of here. We'll let you go. Just really quickly, just to confirm, and that's for all languages supported. What languages are supported in this? Is it Ukrainian? What language pairs, I should say?
Well, what we're looking at, obviously, Ukrainian is a big part of this, and we're waiting to see what the need is going to be. We're going to be able to use our database of interpreters, that is over 12,000, to address that. But we know that there are also interpreters that are going to need to be able to offer their services, and we are just going to play it by ear and see what languages. We're anticipating that Polish, Ukrainian, English, it could be Bulgarian, it could be Romanian. We're just going to have to see how this plays out, but we're going to do everything we can to support it.
Yeah, I think none of us are strangers to unpredictability here in the language services industry. So,
especially right now.
Well, Godspeed, sir. Thank you very much, Barry. Make sure to drop that link in the comments so everybody can head on over there and check it out.
Will do. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Ciao. All right, Mr. Oscar, let's go get into it here. Hey, you set this up, sir, so I want you to have the opportunity to kick the conversation off, talking about your article that you wrote here, which I can bring up on screen, of course. How translators can help the people of Ukraine. Why did you write this, Oscar, and what's in it? Now I think Oscar's on mute.
I copied barrier in muting myself like interpreters do. Okay, it's a good habit not to put noise into the conversation, but you have to remind of unmuting yourself. Okay, let's go. I wrote this article because I think information and reliable information specifically is key in this kind of situation. So what I did is an ongoing article. I mean that I update it whenever there's something new that's important to bear in mind. And just 1 minute before starting our live cast, I added an information that Translators Without Borders sent us by email, and it's that they are offering a form in which you can write how you can help regarding the Ukrainian crisis. So if you go to the article, there's an update saying dated of February 28th, and you can access that doc. I have also dropped it in the comments, but anyway, if you have any kind of doubt, just access the whole article and see the thing. I have also shared by the end of the article some of the initiatives.
Is this what we're looking at? Right here
Yeah.
on screen. Register with Translators Without Borders.
A little bit up, please.
A little
Before
bit.
that, just at the very beginning,
That's it.
when I start talking about Translators Without Borders, that's the beginning of the article.
Okay.
That's what you can see: the title, the main picture, and that's it.
This is
Join
it.
Translators Without Borders as a volunteer.
All right.
And there at the very beginning of the text, you can see an update on February 28th, telling you how you can contribute in a specific way to this crisis. There's an asterisk update on February 28th. Access this Google Doc to join the Clear Global and Translators Without Borders Rapid Response in Ukraine initiative. Clear Global and Translators Without Borders join forces, they work together. And you can see that the article begins...
Here's the form right here. Clear Global and TWB Rapid Response in Ukraine.
That's the form.
Okay. Sorry, everybody
Clear Global
in chat. It took a while.
Clear Global is the organization that has mapped the languages in Ukraine. As Barry has just said, there are several languages that are very important in this crisis. And only within Ukraine, there are 20 languages. That's the map with which I began the article, because I think it's very significant. And then you have Translators Without Borders. And what Translators Without Borders do is organizing the translation flow and putting the translators to work together on the platform that is based on a translation management system. So it's consistent, and there's a way for them to work together as teams.
So really quickly, am I correct in understanding, and perhaps if there's anyone from TWB in chat, you can clarify. But for translators, this is the sign-up form. Register with Translators Without Borders, the standard sign-up form. I think this is year-round here. And then, oh, there's Fardad's post. Oh, I lost my other post here. But then for the other one, the Clear Global is a Google form here, and somebody will drop that in chat as well. Yeah. This is more for anybody. You don't have to be I'm not a translator. I'm a horrible translator, but I could sign up for this. I could sign up my company for this because there's are you an individual or an organization? Okay.
That's something important to clarify, because if you are a translator or a language professional and you want to join Translators Without Borders, I have explained the whole process in the article. I have joined myself because that's something that I was needing to do. Sorry, let me get my computer plugged 1 minute, because otherwise...
That could be disastrous.
I'm gonna lose my connection. Okay, so in the article itself, what I did was listing the steps that you need to go through to join Translators Without Borders. And that's something I did myself, because as it happens in life so many times, you think of doing something, but you don't do it until it's quite urgent, you know? So that's the ordinary process. But what they said to me when I was talking to them, preparing for this event, is that during a crisis like this, there are so many needs. It's so urgent that sometimes you cannot wait to have the properly trained, highly qualified translators. Sometimes anyone who speaks languages like Polish and Ukrainian can interpret or translate or help somehow. And that's why they released this form, so that anyone can sign directly through this form to help in the very specific Ukrainian crisis, in the situation of war that Ukraine is undergoing right now.
So, talking about the situation of war, let's get into it. The topic today is about language, misinformation, war. You have a background in translation. You have a background in international journalism. And we wanted to talk today about, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of LinkedIn posts. There's a lot of Facebook. There's a lot of Telegram activity. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got their own, what they think are a set of facts. We wanted to talk about how to identify false information? How to identify inflammatory information? And I'm going to start out here by calling bullshit on myself here, because as to be expected, if we're talking about a international conflict, I'm going to get some letters to the editor when I set this event up. And thank you. Thank you to everybody who's sent me direct messages, who's commented on our stuff, because I'm getting a lot of different perspectives in my direct messages. And a lot of the feedback that I'm getting is that in this event talking about inflammatory language, I have used inflammatory language to write the description for the event. The thumbnail is a great example. Let's see, where's my thumbnail here? There. The language of war. War. And I have been informed by folks out there that this is a special military operation and not necessarily a war. I have kept it the same. I have kept war on there because I believe that words matter, and I think this is a war. And another feedback that I've gotten is referring to this as Putin's war, and I believe that is fair language as well. Differing opinions, please leave so in the comments. Because Putin is the one that decided to undertake this aggression against Ukraine and put forces in there. So I will be standing by those comments unless someone convinces me otherwise. But we want to keep it, keep the conversation going here and avoid that incendiary language as much as possible. Oscar, how do you balance? Because this is my challenge. How do you balance between taking a stand, I don't want to say taking a stand, but having a clear message and not pissing everybody off, essentially, not offending people, not upsetting differing groups out there that you didn't intend to?
I believe in intercultural dialogue, and that was the reason why I named my copywriting and translation agency Intercultural with a K, because that was a very important initiative in the European setting some years ago. They declared the year of intercultural dialogue. So I try to be respectful with everyone and as objective as I can. I mean, I have this journalistic ethics that tell me that there's information. I mean, there's a kind of genre that's a piece of news, and that's subjective, and it has to be close to the facts, as close to the facts as possible. And then you can interpret something like you are doing here. You are interviewing me, we are talking, and we have our own interpretations of the facts, but we still have to present the facts and be reasonable about how we interpret them. And then there's opinion. And when there's opinion, it's just what you think about something, but you state it clearly as an opinion. Mm-hmm. And what I do is, okay, I'm sharing news, I'm sharing facts. So for instance, I'm writing about how to help the people of Ukraine. That's basically facts. That's basically information. Mm-hmm. But I give some opinions at the beginning of the text, so you know that that's my opinion. I believe that we should or we must act here and now. But still, I try to base my opinions on the best sources available. I try to fact check myself. Or, very important, look what kinds of fact checking have conducted the main media out there, the main media you trust, because this is a matter of trust. I mean, there's a lot of professionalism out there, but you have to trust your media. I mean, some people will trust one newspaper, some people will trust a radio, but I hope that all the journalists out there are doing their best to tell the story in appropriate ways. So that's it. Intercultural dialogue, respect for everyone. And when I stand for something, I said this morning on LinkedIn that I stand with Europe and that I'm proud of being European because of the sanctions that they have imposed and because of the measures they are taking. That's my opinion. I mean, you might disagree with me. Of course, this is a war, but I have stated this as a clear opinion. And when I bring you facts, they are information. You can see it.
Yeah, and with the opinions, I do believe everyone's entitled to their incorrect opinions. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone has a story, has experience that I am not aware of, and need to take that into account and somehow balance that line between standing up for what's right, I guess, or what I should say, standing up for what you believe is right, and keeping it professional, so to speak. And man, we're going to go look at some LinkedIn posts. This is, in my introduction, I said, any international conflict has the potential to turn into a civil war here in the language services industry, because we all break bread together. We all sit at the same tables. We all work together. We're all part of the same value chain. To your point about different news outlets in Ukraine, I wanted to show this from DW. If you're not checking these guys out, they're doing great coverage.
To show Russian soldiers dancing before heading to the front line in Ukraine. The video is circulating on several platforms and has been viewed thousands of times. But the video isn't from Ukraine. It dates from 2018 and shows a Uzbekistan military band at a concert in a subway. Using a reverse image search, we found older versions of the video and were able to locate it with Google Maps. We come across photos of a subway station in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, not in Russia. Ever since Russia attacked Ukraine, thousands of images and videos of battle scenes have flooded the internet. But be careful what you share. Not everything is real or what it appears to be. These images allegedly show Russian jets launching attacks. However, the images are actually from the video game Arma 3. It is by no means the first time that such game sequences have been posted and misused as combat images. We have seen similar examples during the Afghanistan crisis last year. However, the case with the following images is different. Here we see a formation of fighter jets flying over an urban area. A Twitter user has written in Chinese, live broadcasting of the war in Ukraine. The reverse image search of a screenshot reveals that the video dates back to 2020 and shows an air show north of Moscow. Some users are seeking attention by uploading old videos, and sometimes the media falls for it. This is what happened at the TV branch of the German media outlet Bild. The images show hundreds of Russian soldiers allegedly parachuting over the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, as the presenter explains to us. But the footage is old. We found the exact same video on Facebook dating back to 2016. The footage, it appears, is from Russia. The assault on Ukraine is not only happening from the air, but also on the ground. Again, don't believe everything you see here. Take this TikTok video. It shows a huge explosion allegedly stemming from an attack in Ukraine a day before the Russian invasion began. But what should you make suspicious is that the trees and bushes are surprisingly green for February in Ukraine. We also checked for older versions here and found several narratives of the same event via reverse image.
And this video is a couple days old, I think, so I'm sure there's more out there.
The city of Novosibirsk that went up in flames.
I've seen that in Brazil, some TV networks exhibited those video game images as images of the war. So sometimes even large broadcast channels commit mistakes or whatever. That's why we need good fact-checking teams and good journalism to see if things are real or not. And another thing that helps is when you understand the language and you have your direct sources. There's a red line between propaganda and censorship. And in today's sanctions, the European Union said that they are gonna ban some state-owned Russian media, and that's complicated. That's something that we still have to analyze and see how it unfolds. Anyway, when I was starting to my BA in journalism, we studied the Iraq war, and it was a kind of video game-like war. It was the first war that we saw live, but at the same time, the images were so vague because the only thing we would see at the time, you may remember the missiles and the weapons, the sound of weapons and everything, but there was a lot of disinformation at the time. And I'd like to tell you the difference between disinformation and misinformation.
Please.
You might get misinformed because you have bad information, and that doesn't mean that there's a kind of disinformation process going on. Disinformation is a process that usually stems from propaganda, and it's something that an organization does on purpose. They spread fake news, they spread propaganda in their many forms, and that's disinformation. So please bear this in mind. You might be misinformed because you don't have the right sources, or you might be suffering from disinformation because someone has spread that in an active way. And
it's a good point that nobody thinks that they're misinformed, right? Yeah. Everybody thinks that they're dealing, including myself, right? It's just human nature. We think that we're dealing with the right. That's our base. That's like our starting point. And then it's like human beings almost have to be convinced that they don't know everything, right? It's like you have to retrain your brain to say, you know, maybe everything CNN telling me isn't so true.
That's a more scientific approach. I mean, I have this opinion, I have these facts, but if there's something coming that might change that because I have seen all the facts, I need to change my mind and I need to accept that there's something new coming. And that's why I said that the ban on Russian media might be something very complicated. It might be an act of censorship, and sometimes it's interesting to see the versions. The problem is that sometimes the general population is subject to this disinformation process going on from all sides because of the war, and they cannot find themselves and understand how to get properly informed. Differently from us, language professionals or journalists, because we have the facts and we have the ability to read the languages, to analyze the words, to analyze the messages, and to go to fact checkers and good sources. And something that was that was terrible at the beginning of the war is that President Vladimir Putin spoke about genocide as the justification of the invasion of Ukraine. And I went to BBC fact-checking article and analyzed if this was really happening or not, because it's a very serious statement. I mean, for you to have an idea, genocide is not even a word that existed before World War II.
Genocide, there is a loaded word. There's a loaded word that, by the way, is being used on both sides now. I think it was originally used by Russian media, if not Putin himself, and now I believe there are those in Ukraine that are referring to this invasion as a genocide as well. So tell us about that word, genocide. What are your thoughts on that word?
It's important to learn about the origin of this word because it was created by Polish lawyer of Jewish descent, Raphael Lemkin, after the Second World War, and it was very present during the Nuremberg trials. And that's why I wanted to have an interpreter today, and an interpreter who's working for a company that enables dialogue in very complicated situations and in negotiation context sometimes. Because what happened at Nuremberg? Hitler's troops organized themselves to produce the Holocaust. And what was it? It was the massive organized killing of lots of people for a specific reason, that they were mainly Jews and other kinds of people, okay, that they define as such. It's addressed at a specific group, it's massive, and it's very well organized. That's why we cannot speak of so many genocides through history. How did Raphael Lemkin create the word? He coined the term in 1944, and he combined the Greek word genus, race or people, with the Latin suffix caedo, act of killing. So killing people because of race or any other reasons. And when Lemkin was involved in the Nuremberg trials, there was something very interesting, is that the interpreters, that they for the first time used the simultaneous technique, as my friend Evandro Magalhães has told.
As many of us have studied in Introduction to Interpreting, right?
So the interpreters enable the Nazi officials to speak and to explain themselves and to defend themselves. And that's a lesson from history that we should bear in mind for the current crisis. So when there's an address by President Vladimir Putin saying that there's genocide, I think that we must have at least a respect for someone who's an elected chief of state and see and go to the facts and see what happens. First things first, there has been an ongoing conflict in Ukraine for some years, and 14,000 people at least have died. So, okay, there's something happening there. But that's different from the Holocaust, and that's different from Srebrenica.
And this, Rwanda. By the way, to provide both sides of an argument, this, by the way, is what Russian supporters are claiming, as, you know, we need to go in there and clean stuff up because they're killing each other. Hey, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying these are the arguments that I've heard, that there's genocide happening. Also, hate, you know, before we go into talking about the denazification, I want to turn it over to the audience. This isn't about Tucker or Nimsy or Oscar. Let's take a look at what some of our colleagues have to say in the industry, if you don't mind. And many of you guys know this guy. Let me turn up his volume up. I just want to show some thoughtful posts from around.
It's hard to believe this is happening. This morning I woke up with the news that Ukraine is under attack. As many of you know, I lived almost 2 years in Ukraine.
Sorry for the buffering.
And that's a country that I learned to love, that I learned about the culture, that I made friends that now are in danger. It's a madness. We are in 2022. Such violent solutions are not expected from humanity anymore. I hope the peace goes back to the heart of those making this war, and that our Ukrainian friends are back to safety.
Thank you, Kaloa. For those of you that I don't know if he's watching. If you're watching, hi there. I wanted to go through some other stuff here as well. I couldn't sleep last night, so to feed my Canva addiction, I put together this 25 different forms of propaganda. And this is, I wanted to be as neutral as I could on this. So this is taken from just Wikipedia. I just copy and pasted from Wikipedia. And it goes through 25 clicks, and you will learn about 25 different forms of propaganda. And how that helps is it's going to let you identify when propaganda is being used on you, perhaps. So go check that out. That is posted on the Nimsy Insights LinkedIn page, which, by the way, if you're not, please subscribe and all of that jazz. Oscar is here. Content Quo, we donated euros to Ukraine to help stop the war and alleviate its consequence. Here is how your company can do to help stop the war. So go check out Content Quo. They're linking to fundraising opportunities. I will warn everybody, though, that I'm not endorsing anything on here. There are a lot of scams going around right now. There are a lot of bad actors who want to take advantage of this situation for their own benefit. So be careful where you're sending your money. Stefan was my last guest here on Nimsy Live. Just published an article last night. Get it in before print. You'll see the social media going out today. But this is, many of you guys have already seen this in the news, but go check this out. This German interpreter, it just breaks down crying in tears when interpreting for Ukrainian President Zelensky. That's an interesting one. Lots of messages of support. Some interesting conversation around foreign policy. I don't want to get into that.
This interpreter said on Twitter that she had been interpreting for peace conventions and for this kind of events for a long time, but she couldn't help bursting into tears when interpreting Zelensky. And that's what happens. I mean, communication between humans means we have emotions. And as professionals we are, we need to be aware of those emotions because they might arise at any time. And that's what makes us humans. And I find her message on Twitter very respectable. I mean, she's being as professional as she could, but she has also felt overwhelming emotions at a point. And that's something that happens within a situation like this. The thing that we need to be aware of is that there are several kinds of propaganda. There's white propaganda.
There's 25 kinds of propaganda, according to Nimsy Insights.
There are different ways. What you shared is something very, very interesting. There are propaganda techniques, or there are propaganda ways of spreading propaganda. But we might see it from the category point of view. This varies depending on the author. I'm not getting into the research now, but let's say that there's a propaganda that is quite open. It's called white propaganda. You can see it. Okay, we are doing this and we are great and we want to get this and that. There's a propaganda that's black propaganda that is identified as propaganda from another source. And you think that it's from another source, maybe from the other side, and it's not. And then there's a gray zone between those ways. So that's why it's so difficult to dive into these issues, and that's why we have to be very careful about that. And that's, again, the need for fact-checking. And that's how us journalists and linguists can contribute by trying to spread verified information from trusted media. And as you said, also initiatives by ONGs and other organizations that are trusted, because, of course, there's a lot of scamming. You don't want your money to go to where it shouldn't go. And another point that's very important is that I think there's a moral obligation to bear the victims in mind all of the time, because there's a military scenario, but there are lots of people suffering there. And it doesn't matter if they are Ukrainian, if they are Russian, they are citizens of the world, they are human, and they are suffering. And that's why I focus my article on sharing different ways of helping all these people, most of them civilians, but there are also people in the military that have just joined forcibly, that they were civilians 1 week ago and now they are in the military. Yep. So I don't like to draw a line between the military and the civilians. That's so strong, so defined.
I will draw a line. I will draw a line between military, civilians, and language professionals, though. I mean, I believe language professionals are out there. You know, they're like the medics in wartime. Like, don't shoot the medic. Language professionals are out there trying to improve conversation, and we're coming up here on 10 minutes, and I've got to go take kids to school and all of that stuff because life goes on. But I do want to do a plea to the industry: is you don't need you can have your firmly held beliefs. We can talk about our firmly held beliefs. Heck, I've probably let slip a few of my firmly held beliefs, even though I'm trying to be neutral here. That is absolutely okay. What is not okay is attacking Russian translators, attacking Russian project managers, vendor managers, linguists. For my LSP colleagues out there, I would implore you, please do not use this as an opportunity to take some business from your neighbors next door, whether be your next door neighbors on the east or the west. And for client companies out there, buyers of localization services, I know a lot of you don't have a ton of control over this. You have various procurement policies and whatnot, but I would encourage you to think twice before switching away from your Russian vendors. Why? Because this is here's a statement. Here's a statement. Tell me if I'm wrong. This is Putin's war. This is Putin's war. I know there's plenty of Russians that support this aggression, this invasion of Ukraine, but there are also plenty of Russians, many of them in our industry, that do not support this. So whatever side you're on, please do not take it out on our friends and colleagues here in the language services industry. Now, interesting discussion is fine. Now, if you're going to debate things online publicly, please do so. Please do so, because I get to learn from that. I get to learn from both sides, and everybody else gets to learn from both sides. Do your best to make a good argument so that you're representing your cause well, because the rest of the industry is watching and will be forming opinions based upon that. But don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to get in debates. But let's respect each other, because we're all on the same team. We're all working towards fostering understanding in the language services industry. There's my cheesy pitch for the industry.
Yeah, as I said before, intercultural dialogue is essential. Many civilians and many colleagues from the industry who are Russian are saying that they don't agree with the war, and some people are demonstrating in Russia against the war, and they are sent to jail, but they demonstrate the same way. So,
and by the way, if you have Russian colleagues, competitors, frenemies, whatever, who have not spoken out against the war, do not make them. Do not make them. Compelled speech is a slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care where it's coming from. And I am not going to put any Russian on camera who has to deal with the consequences of speaking out, especially on a platform that's banned in Russia. So, I mean, this pressure of our Russian colleagues to say something denouncing the war, think twice before applying that, please. There's my second.
And there are cyber attacks are being verifying that some websites were under attack. You can see it all in the article. But the important thing is, let me clarify what I said before. Of course, there's a difference between the military and the civilians. Of course, what I said before is that some civilians had to go forcibly to join the military because of the war. So that's what the line blurs a little bit. But anyway, with the translators, the interpreters, as civilians intervene in some way on a distance basis or on the ground in the war. And my thoughts are with all the victims, mainly the civilian victims of this war. And that's why we must support all the organizations that are already there, working with them directly. And we can try to minimize the damage. Of course, we cannot stop the war. We can ask to stop the war. We can position ourselves. Like, we have not the capacity to stop the war. All we can do is help. And as person that has a special ability with languages or with communication, you can share good information, you can share ways of helping from trusting sources, and you can also share how you're helping yourself, not as a matter of ego to show off, but just to say, okay, I'm helping and I'm doing this, because in less than a week, so many things have changed that there's no time to wait. So look for the best ways to help, choose your own, and start right now. You can do even little things will be helpful to people. I shared a post on Facebook, and Facebook suggested me to start a fundraiser there. And there's some money going to an ONG. It's not much, but it's better than zero, okay? And maybe you can do something similar too. On the platform you want, for the ONG you want. There are people gathering goods and sending them through the Ukrainian embassies to help the people. There are others that prefer to donate in money, Bitcoin, whatever they have. And this might extend. We don't know how long, but this might extend. We are all watching the peace dialogue, the negotiations that are being held while the war is still in full rage. So let's hope for a peaceful solution as soon as possible.
Agreed. I think with that, we're coming up to the end of our time here. Oscar, thank you. Hey, chat. Thanks, chat. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for all of your insight. We didn't get to you today. I hope you forgive me for not having the guts to brave into the chat section on this topic in real time without a moderator.
Thank you for having me, Tucker, and thank you for spreading these difficult to speak messages. And thank you everyone who's helping in this crisis. We must be together more than any time. And please feel free to reach me with your messages, doubts, or even discussions about whatever I'm posting, because if there's something we need is to be open to intercultural dialogue and to be able to talk without fighting between ourselves. So anyone is welcome.
Hear, hear. Well, everybody in chat, please join me. Smash that like button for our guest, Óscar Curros, and thank him for having the wherewithal to come on here. Not just come on here, but to help basically organize this entire episode. Speaking of episodes, we've got some coming up here. Tomorrow, I'll be talking about international SAP rollouts with Christopher Hearn from ULG, which will be exciting. I am also, right after that, joining the lovely and talented Nika Alaverdi for our post-workshop Q&A chat and catch-up. This is from a workshop that we did about requests for proposals. We did that live, but we ran out of time. There were lots of questions, which means I probably did a horrible job explaining everything. So those are my two plugs for this. Well, if you're not already subscribed to Nimsy, please do so, and all of that stuff. But I'm just going to do a standard, regular old sign off today. I appreciate our guest Oscar. I appreciate everybody in chat who's contributing to this. I appreciate all of the folks on LinkedIn that are help spreading the word, help identifying misinformation, and keeping it clean and respectful in the comments. I especially appreciate everybody who's sending me private messages or public messages telling me how messed up I am and giving me another perspective on everything, because it's through that open and respectful communication that we all get to grow together as an industry. So with that, once again, my name is Tucker Johnson. This has been Nimsy Live. We'll catch you next time.